The most important person in the world to Christina Applegate has always been her daughter. That simple truth says more about her life than any award or television role ever could. To many people, Christina is the funny blonde from television, the actress who made audiences laugh for decades with sharp timing and fearless humor. But behind the laughter and bright lights is a story that is much heavier and more complex than most fans ever realized. Christina's life has not followed the smooth path that people often imagine when they think of Hollywood success. Instead, it has been filled with pressure, illness, private battles, and emotional scars that began when she was just a child. She was born on November 25, 1971, in Hollywood, California, which sounds almost like destiny. Her father, Robert Applegate, worked in the music industry, and her mother, Nancy Pretty, was an actress and singer. However, her parents separated shortly after she was born, and her mother had to raise her alone. Money was not always steady, and her mother brought her along to auditions and sets because there was no one else to watch her. Christina appeared on television when she was only a few months old, including a small appearance on the soap opera Days of Our Lives. Before she could speak, she was already part of the entertainment world. What may sound glamorous was actually survival. Instead of playgrounds and normal childhood routines, she grew up around cameras, scripts, and adults who treated acting like business. From a very young age, her identity became tied to performance. She was not just a daughter. She was a working child actress. And while her mother loved her, the pressure of making ends meet meant Christina was pushed into a world that demanded results long before she could understand what was happening. This early exposure to fame shaped her entire life, planting seeds of both ambition and deep insecurity that would follow her for decades. As Christina grew older, her career slowly expanded. She took small roles in television and film, learning quickly how to behave on set and how to deliver lines with confidence. By the time she was a teenager, she had already built more professional experience than many adults. But growing up in Hollywood came with a heavy cost. Children in the entertainment industry often face intense scrutiny, and Christina was no exception. At a very young age, she became aware of her appearance and how people judged it. One hurtful comment about her weight stayed with her for years, echoing in her mind and shaping how she saw herself. Instead of feeling secure, she began to worry constantly about how she looked. This anxiety grew stronger when she landed the role that would change her life forever. In 1987, at just 15 years old, she was cast as Kelly Bundy on the hit sitcom Married with Children. The show was bold and controversial, very different from other family comedies at the time. Christina's character was funny, confident, and often the center of attention. Audiences loved her. She quickly became one of the most recognizable faces on television. But while her career soared, her personal struggles deepened. The pressure to maintain a certain body image became overwhelming. She has spoken openly about developing an eating disorder during those years. Some days she limited herself to only a few almonds. She believed that staying thin was the only way to keep her job and remain successful. Even when her weight dropped significantly, the praise she received focused on how she looked rather than how she felt. Instead of asking if she was healthy, people admired her thinness. This reinforced her unhealthy habits and made it even harder to stop. On screen, she appeared lively and carefree. Off-screen, she was fighting a private battle that no one fully understood. The role that made her famous also trapped her in a stereotype. Many casting directors saw her only as the dumb blonde, even though she had much more range as an actress. Breaking free from that image became another challenge she had to face as she entered adulthood. After years on television, Christina wanted to prove she could do more than sitcom comedy. She began taking film roles, hoping to build a career beyond Kelly Bundy. One of her early movies was Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, which did not perform strongly at the box office at first, but later became a cult favorite. Although critics were not impressed in the beginning, audiences eventually embraced the film through home video and television reruns. This pattern followed her throughout her career. She often delivered performances that connected deeply with viewers, even if they were not always praised right away. Over time, She appeared in comedies, dramas, and guest roles that showed her growth as an actress. She worked hard to be taken seriously and not be limited by her early image. In the 2000s, she found new success in both television and film, including a memorable role in Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Later, she starred in the Netflix series Dead to Me, which allowed her to explore deeper emotional themes. The show was praised for its dark humor and strong performances, and many critics noted that Christina brought a new level of vulnerability to her role. It felt like a fresh chapter in her career, one where she was finally recognized for her depth and skill. However, just as this new chapter was gaining momentum, her life took another difficult turn. In 2021, she publicly revealed that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a disease that affects the central nervous system. The condition can cause problems with movement, balance, and energy levels. For someone who had spent her entire life performing, the diagnosis was heartbreaking. She continued working to finish the final season of Dead to Me, but it became clear that her body was no longer able to keep up with the demands of acting. The career she had built over decades was suddenly uncertain. Facing a chronic illness forced her to slow down and rethink her future in ways she had never expected. Living with multiple sclerosis has changed Christina's daily life completely. The disease does not have a simple cure, and symptoms can vary from day to day. She has spoken honestly about the physical pain, exhaustion, and emotional impact of adjusting to a body that does not always cooperate. Tasks that once seemed easy now require careful planning and patience. For someone who grew up in a fast-moving industry that values productivity and perfection, this adjustment has been especially difficult. Yet, through these challenges, she has shown remarkable strength. Instead of hiding her condition, she has chosen to speak openly about it, helping others understand what living with MS is really like. Her honesty has inspired many fans who are facing their own health struggles. At the same time, she has turned her focus more fully toward her family, especially her daughter. Motherhood has become the center of her life, giving her purpose beyond fame or career success. In recent years, she has also discussed writing a memoir that will explore her childhood, career, and personal struggles in greater detail. Rather than focusing on gossip, the book is expected to examine the pressures of growing up in Hollywood and the emotional toll it took on her. By sharing her story, she hopes to bring attention to the challenges that young performers often face behind the scenes. Christina Applegate's journey is not just about celebrity or illness. It is about survival, resilience, and finding meaning even when life does not go according to plan. She may no longer stand under bright studio lights as often as she once did, but her voice carries more power now than ever before. Her story reminds us that behind every public smile there can be hidden battles, and that true strength is not measured by fame but by the courage to keep going, even when everything changes. As Christina Applegate moved further into adulthood, her personal life began to attract the same kind of attention that had followed her career since she was a teenager. Growing up in Hollywood meant that very little of her life was ever truly private. Reporters followed her relationships, magazines speculated about her romances, and photographers captured moments that were often taken out of context. In her 20s and early 30s, she dated several well-known figures, and every relationship seemed to become public discussion. Yet beneath the headlines was a woman who was still trying to understand herself outside of the characters she played. Fame can make relationships complicated. When both partners are part of the entertainment world, busy schedules, public pressure, and constant travel can create strain. Christina eventually married actor Jonathan Skeech in 2001, but the marriage ended in divorce a few years later. Like many personal losses, it was painful but largely kept respectful and private. Later, she found lasting love with musician Martin Lenoble, whom she married in 2013. With him, she built a quieter life centered around family. The birth of her daughter changed her priorities in a way that no career milestone ever had. For someone who had been working since infancy, motherhood offered a new identity that had nothing to do with ratings, reviews, or red carpets. She has often spoken about how becoming a mother grounded her and gave her a sense of stability she did not experience as a child. Instead of chasing the next big role, she began thinking more about balance and emotional well-being. That shift did not erase her past struggles, but it gave her a stronger foundation. Through the ups and downs of love and marriage, Christina slowly learned that success in Hollywood does not guarantee happiness in personal life. Real fulfillment came from feeling safe, supported, and valued for who she was beyond her appearance or career achievements. Health challenges, however, had been part of Christina's story long before her multiple sclerosis diagnosis. In 2008, she was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 36. The news was shocking, especially because she was still young and in the middle of a thriving career. Doctors discovered the cancer at an early stage, which improved her chances of successful treatment. Still, the experience was frightening. She chose to undergo a double mastectomy to reduce the risk of the cancer returning. It was a difficult and deeply personal decision, but she has said that it gave her peace of mind. Later, she also had her ovaries and fallopian tubes removed as a preventive measure due to a genetic mutation known to increase cancer risk. Instead of hiding her diagnosis, Christina decided to speak openly about it. She wanted other women to understand the importance of testing and early detection. Her willingness to share such intimate details helped remove stigma and encourage conversations about health that many people are afraid to start. Facing cancer forced her to reevaluate her life and priorities once again. It reminded her that fame and appearance are fragile and that health can change suddenly. Surviving cancer strengthened her perspective. She began focusing more on advocacy and charity work, using her platform to raise awareness and support research. Although the battle was physically and emotionally exhausting, it also showed her resilience. She had already survived the pressures of child stardom and an eating disorder. Now, she faced cancer with the same determination. Years later, when multiple sclerosis entered her life, she drew upon that same inner strength. Her past experiences had taught her that even the darkest chapters can lead to growth and deeper understanding. When she revealed her multiple sclerosis diagnosis in 2021, the public response was filled with sympathy and support. Multiple sclerosis, often called MS, is a chronic disease that affects the brain and spinal cord. It can cause numbness, weakness, balance problems, and severe fatigue. For an actress whose work depended on physical movement and long hours on set, the impact was immediate and life-changing. Filming the final season of Dead to Me became much more challenging. She has described needing mobility assistance and taking frequent breaks. The production team adjusted schedules to support her, demonstrating respect and care for her condition. Even so, Christina understood that continuing to act at the same pace might not be possible. She has spoken honestly about grieving the loss of the career she built over decades. Acting had always been more than a paycheck. It was how she expressed herself and connected with audiences. Stepping back felt like losing a part of her identity. Yet at the same time, she has shown humor and honesty about her new reality. She has joked about the awkward moments, admitted her frustrations, and thanked fans for their kindness. This openness has made her even more relatable. Rather than presenting herself as a tragic figure, she presents herself as human. She talks about hard days, but also about gratitude. She acknowledges fear, but also hope. That balance is powerful. It shows that strength does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means accepting change and continuing forward anyway. Christina's journey with MS is still unfolding, but she faces it with courage and a sense of realism that many admire. Looking back at her entire life, it becomes clear that Christina Applegate's story is not defined by scandal or downfall. It is defined by survival and transformation. From a baby on a television set to a teenage sitcom star on Married with Children, from a young woman battling self-image to a respected actress in Dead to Me, she has experienced more change than most people do in a lifetime. She has faced criticism, typecasting, illness, and personal heartbreak. Yet she has also experienced love, motherhood, professional success, and the chance to use her voice for good. The idea of a scandal may capture attention, but the deeper truth is more meaningful. Her life reflects the reality that fame does not protect anyone from pain. Success does not erase insecurity. Public smiles do not always reveal private struggles. What makes her story powerful is not tragedy alone, but resilience. She has repeatedly chosen honesty over silence, whether discussing her eating disorder, her cancer battle, or her life with MS. By doing so, she has helped others feel less alone in their own struggles. In many ways, her greatest achievement may not be a specific role or award, but the example she sets by speaking openly about hardship. Christina Applegate's life reminds us that behind every celebrity is a human being navigating challenges, just like anyone else. The spotlight may fade, careers may shift, and health may change, but courage and authenticity endure. Her story continues, not as a tale of sadness alone, but as one of growth, strength, and the enduring power of truth. As the years pass and Christina Applegate moves further away from the fast pace of Hollywood, her story continues to evolve in ways that are quieter but deeply meaningful. When people think of her career, they often remember the laughter first. They remember the bold humor of Married with Children, where she spent more than a decade playing Kelly Bundy, delivering jokes with perfect timing and confidence. They remember her charm and quick wit in films like Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, where she held her own alongside a strong comedic cast. They remember the emotional depth she showed later in Dead to Me, a show that allowed her to explore grief, anger, friendship, and vulnerability in ways audiences had not seen before. But as important as those roles were, they are only part of the full picture. Christina's life has been shaped as much by what happened behind the scenes as by what appeared on screen. Growing up in an industry that values youth and appearance above almost everything else left lasting marks on her self-image. Even after decades of success, she has admitted that she sometimes struggles to see herself clearly. Fame can freeze a person in time in the eyes of the public, but real life keeps moving. Bodies change. Priorities shift. Energy levels rise and fall. For someone who was introduced to the world as a teenager and watched by millions as she grew up, those natural changes can feel magnified. Yet with age has come a stronger sense of self-awareness. Christina has spoken about learning to forgive herself for past mistakes and unhealthy patterns. She has acknowledged that she once placed too much value on external approval. Now, with the perspective that comes from surviving illness and raising a child, she sees things differently. She understands that worth is not measured by a dress size, a box office number, or a television rating. That understanding did not come easily. It was built through years of experience, pain, reflection, and growth. Another important part of Christina's later life has been her decision to speak openly about the realities of the entertainment industry. For decades, many child actors remained silent about the pressures they faced, fearing backlash or damage to their careers. Christina, however, has chosen honesty. She has talked about the loneliness that can come from working long hours as a child while other kids are in school or playing outside. She has described the constant evaluation of her appearance and the way small comments could echo in her mind for years. By sharing these experiences, she contributes to a larger conversation about how young performers are treated and protected.